Welcome to State of Mind, being human and living well.
And living well.
And living well.
And living well.
I'm Deborah Sloss, a licensed marriage and family therapist, and this show's producer and regular host. But today, I'm handing the mic over to State of Mind story coach, Patrice Vecchione, who is guest hosting as we explore aging with resilience, a topic she's passionate about. Patrice Vecchione, a Monterey-based author, artist, and teacher, developed a keen interest in this topic through her own experience of growing older and from watching those around her navigate the process. In particular, she's been inspired by her mother-in-law, Barbara Stark, whose ability to meet life's challenges with adaptability and strength sparked Patrice's desire to explore what it truly means to age resiliently. Aging isn't something that happens all at once. It's a lifelong process that begins much earlier than most of us realize. While we often associate it with later years, experts agree that aging starts in our early 20s. That means the choices we make today shape how we'll experience life in the years ahead. Resilient aging isn't about defying time. It's about embracing change with flexibility, purpose, and joy. In this episode, we hear from people who have learned to lean into the realities of aging while finding ways to thrive well into their later life. Whether you're in your 20s, 30s, 50s, or beyond, the insights shared today can help you prepare for a future where you can continue to grow and adapt. No matter your age today, we hope you'll stay with us for this inspiring conversation about your future. With that, I'll turn it over to your guest host today, Patrice Vecchione.
Thank you, Deborah. Today we'll be talking with three elders about their experiences of aging and what's led them to be the resilient people they are. All of our guests are between their late 80s and mid-90s, and each of them is leading a rich and vibrant life, even with its challenges. Knowing Barbara, Alice, and Elliot for many years led me to want to ask them to share their secrets to living a vital life. Finally, we'll hear from Ruth Nickens, a nurse and senior care specialist. She'll share insights and experiences from her 40-year career on what it takes to age resiliently. Our first guest, Barbara Stark, was born in San Francisco in 1929. At 20, she married. Barbara and her husband had 5 children. 14 years ago, Roy died. For 67 years, Barbara lived in her Palo Alto home, recently relocating to a senior community where she now thrives. In June of 2025, Barbara will turn 96. Welcome to State of Mind, Barbara.
I'm so happy to be here.
A few years ago, I accompanied you to a doctor's appointment, and the doctor, being rather impressed with you and your enthusiasm and joy, asked you where your motivation, where your passion for life comes from. Do you remember how you answered her?
Yes, I love life.
And it was so beautiful. It was a simple answer, and she was bowled over, that you've had health challenges as everybody does as we get older, and yet you still said, I love life. So what do you love about it?
Well, I love the mystery of life. I love being with family. It's been hard recently with the political climate, but I still love being here.
It's great. I'm so glad you do. I love you being here. Can you think of a significant moment in your life that changed your perspective on life and on living?
Yes, I had 5 children, and my second son was born very handicapped. So I went from being a kid, I had to face the reality of of his handicap and trying to manage my family.
You were pretty young when he was born, weren't you?
23.
And so what made your outlook how did I guess really the question is how did your outlook shift as a result of being catapulted into adulthood at only 23?
Well, it was either, if it wasn't me, who would it be that took care of all this? And I guess I found the resilience somehow to keep going and take care of things.
And from what I understand, you never lost your sense of humor.
Well, it was hard there for a while, but no, I still managed to see the funny side of life.
Did resilience start for you, do you think, when you were a child? And if so, how?
Well, yes, it did because I was from a rather dysfunctional family. My mother died when I was 8 years old, and my father remarried, and I had to adjust to a stepmother, and she really wasn't qualified. She was only about 19 or 20 and really too young to manage. I mean, to adapt to an 8-year-old little girl that had just lost her mother. So I think I started to develop some real inner strength at that time. I had to. I didn't think of it this way, of course, as a child, but I had to develop the strength to carry on.
Yeah, and you did.
I did.
I'm wondering to move a little bit further into the subject. How did you think your life was going to go, and how does that compare to the life you've actually lived and are living?
Well, of course, as a young person, I was very idealistic. I thought, well, I'm going to live happily ever after, like most of us do, and I had to face the often harsh realities of what it is to live.
Could you talk a little bit about being married, and how Roy influenced and shaped your life and how the experience of marriage did?
Yes, well, I was sort of a kind of an airhead kid, and being married, we had our first child within in the first year we were married. My husband had a very practical sense. Some of that rubbed off on me, and I was able to, I learned a lot from him, and I think he may have learned to lighten up a little bit from me.
And you have 4 living children.
I do.
Yep, and I'm married to the oldest of them.
Yes.
What was the influence of them on your life, and do you think they enhanced your ability to be resilient?
Oh, absolutely, they did. Yes. Yes, I had to learn patience, and I had to learn how to multitask. I got to be a calming effect on them when maybe I wasn't feeling calm inside at all.
That's a special kind of multitasking, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
And I know being a part of your family, I know some of the stories, and I just wanna touch very quickly on one of them, the time when you opened the front door and young son Tom ran in and followed by a water balloon.
Yes. He he was having some sort of a argument with this person with a water balloon, and the kid threw a water balloon at him. And at that moment, he opened the door, and the water balloon came flying into the front door. And I was so angry. I chased that kid down the street. And the funny part of it was his parents were sitting in their living room, and I was yelling at this kid that he had to be more careful about where he aimed his water balloon, and they just sat there reading the paper like Does this happen every day that some neighbor is yelling at their kid?
I love that story because it shows how spunky you were as a young mom. Are you satisfied with the life that you have lived thus far and how?
Well, I think in general, I'm a happy person. It's been hard to be happy at times. It isn't always easy, like moving into this senior facility was not an easy thing, but I am. I'm pretty content.
Can you talk a little bit about feeling unsafe at home and then what helps you to feel safe at the retirement home?
Yes, well, I decided after I moved in, I was very lonely because I didn't know anyone and my surroundings were so completely different. But I decided that the best way to become acquainted would be to join what was going on here, joined the classes, and I met people, and it's really very interesting here because everybody has a story to tell, and everyone has had what I think is a big life. So I'm quite happy here.
Is there anything you wish you had known or understood earlier in your life, especially when it comes to the process of aging?
Um, I think that's a really difficult question because I had both my grandmothers living and I saw them age and I talked to them about it. My As a matter of fact, my one grandmother, she started losing her hearing and I said to her, "Nana, does that bother you a lot not to hear?" And my grandmother answered, "I've heard enough.
What is it that you still want to accomplish in your life?
I want to learn how to tap dance."
So I better get you a pair of tap shoes for your birthday then.
And so, and I'll get a leotard to go with it.
Never too late, Mom. Thank you, Barbara. Next, I want to introduce you to Alice Tao. Alice was born in 1935 in Guangdong, China. Her family survived World War II and the communist takeover before escaping to Hong Kong. With her husband, Tian, she raised 3 children in Carmel and taught at Middlebury Institute. In retirement, Alice began writing poetry, and in 2023, at the age of 88, her first book was published. Welcome, Alice.
Hi, Patrice.
I'm so happy that you're here today for this conversation about aging and resilience. And when you think about the forces that influenced who you are today, I imagine you were shaped by both choice and circumstance. Could you talk a little bit about what's brought you to who you are now?
I would trace back to I was the first child of my parents, and my father was the only male heir of the first wife of my grandfather. So they all wanted to have a boy, except here I am.
So, by being born a girl and not a boy, that set the course of your life, didn't it?
I would say so, yes.
And can you talk a little bit about how that influenced you, how it made you who you are?
There are a lot of expectations how a girl should behave. And I know that free expression was not exactly encouraged in China at that time. I had this inside resistance that harbor all these years, I guess, until now, I suppose that I can express it.
So are you saying that you're less resistant now, or that all that resistance brought you to the point of today?
I would say that now I find an environment I can express myself freely.
That is a really, really important point. For those of you listening, I would like you to know that Alice and I met 20 years ago when she walked into a poetry writing workshop I was leading at a public library. And so expressing yourself freely has been a great focus of your life for sure since that time. And I want people to also know that at the age of 88, Alice published her first book. So I would say most people who publish books publish them when they're a little bit younger than 88. But your age propelled you forward into publishing this book. Could you talk a little bit about publishing that book, about writing it and editing it and putting it out in the world?
It's all because of Patrice.
Well, you did the work. I helped you out, but you did the work.
You are the one who is holding my hand through this whole process because I had a stroke when I was 86. And when I actually recover, you were just after me, like I would say a silken whip with in your hand. And that get me to the point that, oh, it actually possible. I see there is a path to get there. So I make myself every day, every morning, 2 hours spent in either revising or working on this book before I did anything else. I would not allow myself to do anything else except to start with this first in the morning. And I think that process really helps.
So that's a significant amount of discipline, isn't it?
Well, because you were chasing after me all the time.
I was chasing after you, and I'm not so sure my whip was silken. Sometimes I think it had barbs at, at the end. Well, there's a great opportunity to know someone for a long period of time and watch their development as a writer. And of all my students, I have watched most of all your development as a writer and seen you become a very striking poet, able to translate experiences that were from your early childhood into beautiful works of art. And when you had your stroke, I remember coming over and bringing you some soup. And when you had that stroke, it was when I realized that you weren't going to be here forever. And I knew that I wasn't the only one who wanted that book. So you have a purpose in life. And I know you told me just yesterday a local bookstore is asking for more copies of the book. So, what is it like to live with that sense of purpose?
Total surprise because looking back in my childhood, oil lamp, no running water, outhouses. So it's just such a difficult to imagine that this is happening to me at this age.
You're listening to State of Mind, Being Human and Living Well. I'm your guest host, Patrice Vecchione, and today we're exploring aging with resilience, how we can navigate the challenges of getting older while maintaining meaning, purpose, and joy. Joining us for this conversation are Barbara Stark, Alice Tao, and Elliot Ruchowitz-Roberts, three inspiring elders living fully into their 80s and 90s. Later in the show, we'll also hear from registered nurse and senior health and wellness programming specialist Ruth Nickens. As always, you can find a resource list for this episode, including anything we mentioned today, in the show notes at stateofmindmedia.org. Back to our interview. I mean, most people don't have this happen. And we often in this culture especially think of old age as a time of reflection, retreat, but not production. And you are living an enormously creative life right now.
I never thought of it that way. It's just that certain urge in me. Oh, this is interesting. Oh, I want to do this. Oh, I want to do that. I want to go to this concert. I want to go to this lecture. And then at one point, it's kind of hard for me physically, but then I make myself do it. And then at the end, I'm always happy that I make the effort. So I say, oh, well, what's wrong with keep trying?
Yeah, that's right. Whereas the tendency for a lot of people, I mean, I speak for myself at 67, my tendency is, oh, yeah, I really want to go to that concert. Oh, I think I'll stay home. And so I love that you take the initiative and you do it. You said a little bit just now, a moment ago, about your early childhood. And I wonder, I think it would be very interesting for listeners to know a little bit more about your early life so they could see what a big contrast there is between that time and now you make your home in Carmel, California, where you've lived for a long time. And you're the mother of three children. Your husband passed away. Tien died how many?
Yeah, 14 years ago.
14 years ago. So you've been living on your own for 14 years. So tell us a little bit more, please, about your early life and having to flee China.
I think I was 2 or 3 when Japan invaded China in the Manchurian area. And of course, then followed by the Second World War. So my parents were lucky in the sense they were high school teachers. So whichever school would hire them, they would be going there. And we were able to settle in this farming village that is very stable and kind people. And they taught at the high school there for 5 years. So then the war ended, and then we moved back to our own hometown. And all the sights and sounds of that simple life just stick with me. And the way how girls were treated just bring me a lot of resentment inside that I couldn't express until now.
That's so interesting how resentment, how frustration can be a motivator for expression and creativity.
I would say so because I would watch some traditional families, rich families, spoil their kids and their kids never learn to do anything. If I will one day have the resources to decide on that, that's never going to happen.
Do you feel satisfied with your life? Is there something you haven't done yet that you want to do?
No, I'm totally happy with my life because within my limits, I just feel that I have good friends. I have a group of friends that I practice Tai Chi with, and f- coming from different countries. And that's the part that I love the most about this little community here. It's like a mini United Nations, and people are a lot more open minded. And I talk to people like PhDs and scholars, and then I talk to people working in the electricity, plumbing, and the solar panel. They're all so very interesting. I I I just have to count my blessings.
Very important. And I think you do that, you offer that to yourself as well.
As I get older, I decided that I really, really need to be kind to myself.
So what does that look like? What do you do that's kind to yourself?
Well, if I feel that I should not put other people down or like in a disagreeable way, I should treat myself the same. if I make a mistake, oh, I recognize that, then, I say, oh, well, I'll do better next time. It's just, sometimes I think society expect you to look a certain way, to behave a certain way, to speak a certain way. Each each of us, you know, is born different. So the essence of each person is different from everyone else. And each will express themselves differently. So if I try hard to listen to what they are really saying instead of the way they express it, it seems to me it helps me a lot.
That's great. That's something we should all remember. I want to move direction just a little bit here and ask you how do you navigate the challenges of maintaining your physical and emotional health?
I think little problems are the best if you catch them and correct them at the right time. If my daughter was not here to get me to ER after my stroke or in time, I think I would either be an invalid or die. Or I just think that along the way, little problems is really alert you to be more disciplined in how you take care of yourself, because I really don't like pain. So now I find that if I spend every morning stretching and doing my routine physical activity, I can be pain free. And that just encouraged me to keep doing it. Okay, Alice, you can still do it. You better do it because one day you might not be able to.
You also pay attention carefully to how you eat, don't you?
Oh, golly. I decided that all this convenience food, just lots of ingredients, and I try to avoid those because try to eat a lot of vegetable and fruit and grain and any kind of I go for balanced diet with natural ingredients. And I'm so glad that my daughter is helping me do all this grocery shopping.
Yeah, she's a great support.
What I'm aiming for right now actually is like pain-free physically and stress-free mentally. That means a lot of things that used to bother me. I said, well, why let it bother me? I can't do anything about it. So
So is that the main thing you do for ways of coping with stress is to let it go, let things go?
yes, yes. But I have to say though, really, I mean, when you were young, I feel that I did plan ahead because all this is possible because I think I have a reasonable financial foundation. And because if you have to worry about expenses, meeting the expenses every day, that is stressful.
Thanks, Alice. And now we'll talk with 88-year-old Elliot Ruchowitz-Roberts, who was born in New York City. When he was a child, his parents changed their name to Roberts to protect them from anti-Semitism. Elliot taught at Monterey Peninsula College. He and his wife Tay raised 3 children. Later, he was Tay's sole caregiver when she had ALS until her death in 2010. He's been grateful to live with another special woman, Debbie, for many years. Welcome to State of Mind, Elliot.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
When you were young, how did you view old people?
Well, the world I grew up in was really 2 worlds. The world of Ruchowitz, which was the world I was born into as a child, and that was our family name, and the world of Roberts, which was the world when my father changed our name to hide the fact that we were Jewish. Given the world situation at the time, this is 1939, and also the kind of virulent anti-Semitism in this country. And so the Ruckowitz world really had elders and old people who I felt an incredible distance from. They were, for me, one was a very imposing figure. We lived in a Brooklyn apartment, my mother, my father, my brother, myself, my aunt and my uncle, and my grandfather Hertzberg. And he and I slept in the same room together. And he was a very austere figure to me. And in a way, even though I slept next to him, we really didn't have what I consider to be any kind of relationship. He was just always very, very distant, and also, really the object of a great deal of criticism. My other grandfather Ruckowitz, he was a much milder person, but still, when I remember the time when he was dying and they wanted me to come to be with he called for me, actually. He wanted his grandsons and grandchildren there, and I just stood there before him, and there was nothing I could say because I couldn't speak to him. So I really, in a way, old people were just something another world for me. Nothing, there were no figures in them that I really admired. In fact, more, a little bit in trepidation of.
Did that change as you got older?
Uh, well, not really because, they both died before I really got older. And and in a way, I really didn't when I was growing up also, I didn't really I mean, old people weren't really, in my consciousness. I mean, for some reason, when I look back, I can't remember. I mean, I think of my uncles, my older uncles, and actually they were trying to acclimate me to the world they lived in, which was a world where they really had a struggle. They were all blue collar workers. They were all in that generation between first immigrant, from children of first immigrants. And I remember one time, which kind of stands out in my memory. We were at my aunt's house, actually in New Jersey, and all of my uncles were kind of, you know, sitting in a circle. And for some reason, I entered the circle, and they all blew smoke at me. And, and it made me tear, my eyes tear, and made me cough, and they all laughed, and I remember running out of that and, just feeling so terrible about it.
So, Elliot, with that background and that experience of elders, how does that affect you now that you're an elder?
Well, I think I'm much gentler with younger people. And, I don't have that particular need. I don't feel I have to initiate people into, uh, into the culture, and it's also a different world because I don't have that family nexus. We were very there were 2 large immigrant families. My mother had 8 siblings, my father had 7. I had lots of aunts and uncles and cousins, and so it was kind of like a community defending itself against that outside world. And, I live in a kind of a really different world, so uh, I don't feel that I have to initiate people into the world. And in fact, uh, maybe I've been derelict about this, but I feel people have to find their own way, mainly because we're all so distinctively different. And how I coped is not the way you're going to cope. It's not the way my son copes. It's not the way my grandsons cope. And I think that might have been my own issue with my father because he wanted me. He had a very clear direction for me where he wanted me to go, and I just resisted like hell. So, and he and I had a very antagonistic relationship, also with my mother too, but I think it's just the way I was for whatever reason.
And did that change how you parented your children?
Yeah, yeah, I pretty much felt that I was there to help them any way I can, offer as much love as I could, support them, but they really needed to find their own ways, and I'm not sure that was such a good thing. In fact, now, my 2 children with children, run a tighter ship than I ever ran. with their children. And it's kind of interesting to see how that works, how sometimes we just do the opposite of what we experienced. And, and that's why, it's each of us is so unique that sometimes it's really difficult to offer advice because what's good for you is not necessarily good for someone else. And what's good for them is not necessarily good for you.
At 88 years old, and I've known you a long time, it's hard for me to realize that you're actually 88. What keeps you going? What gives you your joy and enthusiasm?
Well, I I kind of think of Basho, the haiku master poet, and when he was dying, the tradition among haiku poets is you wrote a death poem, and so he was dying, and the people gathered around him asked him if he was going to write a death poem, and he said no. He said every poem is a death poem, and every day is the last day. So, I mean, that's in a way how I start my days. This is and what that means is to try to be as totally present in everything I do that I can. And what's amazing about this moment, at least in my life now, I mean, is just the incredible beauty in the world. I mean, like, I sit at breakfast, we have a little bird bath outside, and you watch, I mean, these birds you see every day. Like, the Steller's blue jay or the robin or the, Oregon junco, and each day they're incredibly beautiful. They never get old, and the colors change, you watch them bathing and the way the, drops of water flicker out and get caught in the sun, so you've got this whole veil of light around them. You take a walk and the spring flowers that are coming up now are just absolutely incredible with the clouds. I don't know if you watched the clouds lately, but there's the incredible, and we're so fortunate to live in this area. I mean, I grew up in Brooklyn, right? I grew up in a concrete world, where like as I wrote in, I did it's a piece I'm working on where I wrote about what was my contact with the natural world when I grew up. It was with cockroaches and rats and everything that had to be exterminated. So my whole natural world was something you had to fight against instead of something that you were part of and the incredible beauty of it.
Do you think of yourself as a resilient person?
No, I've never thought in those terms. I mean, whoever thinks of themselves as resilient, you know? It's what I like it with your permission, I'd like to read something from Robertson Jeffers because he really addresses this because we're dealing with a human characteristic, a human people. And this is at the end of a talk he gave in 1941 about a poet and the democracy. And the world is falling apart. We're about to go into World War I. And he says, we are a tough race, we humans. We have lived through an ice age and many ages of barbarism. We can live through this stage of civilization. And when at length it wears out and crumbles under us, we can plot our agony of resurrection and make a new age. Our business is to live through anything, and to keep alive through everything our ideal values of freedom and courage and mercy and tolerance.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful.
So, I think when you talk about resilience, I always hate it when we put labels on things because then so much more is involved. We kind of think of it in terms of something we do consciously. And, what I like about Jeffers' quote is he's suggesting this is part of what it is to be human. This is part of our nature.
So maybe there's a link between resilience and acceptance.
Yeah. Mhm. Or, the Mayo Clinic defines resiliency, and this is the one I like, is being able to adapt to life's misfortunes and setbacks.
Do you see yourself as having been resilient after the death of your wife?
Uh, yeah, although that I survived is, yes, I would think would be a kind of resilience because it was, I mean, the grief was really overpowering. And at some point, I had to make a decision, and that was, whether to continue or not, because the grief was actually physical, the pain was physical. And then I realized that I don't live alone. There are all these people who I care about, who care about me, and any action I took really had to be considerate of them. And, to decide not to continue living would be a terrible thing for all of them. I wasn't, I'm not acting alone. And maybe and that's part of, when you talk about what keeps me going is that sense of interdependence of people. No one really exists alone. We all, exist in relationship with other people, in relationship with actually the world as well. Anything I do has consequences beyond myself.
Thank you, Elliot. I'm your guest host, Patrice Vecchione, and you're tuned in to State of Mind, Being Human and Living Well. Today, we're exploring aging with resilience, how we can face the challenges of growing older with adaptability, purpose, and joy. We've been hearing from three elders, Barbara Stark, Alice Tao, and Elliot Ruchowitz-Roberts, who are thriving well into their 80s and 90s. Next, we're joined by registered nurse and senior programming specialist Ruth Nickens, who shares insights on navigating the physical and emotional aspects of aging. Now, let's get back to our interview. Joining us next is Ruth Nickens, a registered nurse and health educator with over 40 years of experience and 20 working exclusively with older adults. As the Health and Wellness Program Coordinator at the Tallahassee Senior Center, Ruth has spent her career supporting seniors in staying active, socially connected, and emotionally resilient. She also played a key role in imagining and developing the twice award-winning Upslide program, which brings adults 50 and older together to build meaningful social connections and reduce loneliness, something that's deeply tied to mental health and overall well-being. And if you find yourself thinking her voice sounds a little familiar, you're not imagining it. Ruth is actually the sister of our show's producer and regular host, Deborah Sloss, and as it turns out, she also happens to be the perfectly qualified expert guest for this topic. Welcome to State of Mind, Ruth.
Thank you so much for having me. It's really a privilege.
Earlier in the show, we heard our guest, Elliot, wrestle with the term resilience. How would you define resilience in the context of aging?
Well, interestingly, Elliot didn't actually think he was resilient, though clearly he did demonstrate some of the qualities. Resilience is the ability to bounce back after some sort of difficult or traumatic event or situation. But not only bouncing back and coming through it, but also emerging stronger with new skills and new perspectives.
Like what? What new skills and perspectives might we gain? I'm thinking about myself. Have I learned new skills as a result of my need to be resilient?
I think you probably have. I mean, one thing is to be really introspective and to take a look at yourself and be able to analyze and evaluate, how did I react to that? Am I being the person that I want to be? And additionally, it's finding it's those behaviors of working hard to have a positive outlook about things, trying to see the upside as well as the downside.
Also, embracing the things that are truly important to us that give us meaning and purpose. So there's many different ways, which can come from the need to become resilient.
What are the most important factors that help older adults stay nimble, especially when facing challenges like chronic illness, pain, loss, or loneliness?
Oh, there's so much here. It's so rich, but there's some really basic things. And I've done a lot of work with laughter and humor as part of stress reduction and just a higher quality of life. And the two parallel so beautifully. So first of all, we need to be socially connected. That, research has shown that that is the number one quality that by which people lead successful and have positive, successful lives and have positive aging experiences. Another really important strategy is physical. It's about moving your body every day, whether you take a fitness class or belong to a gym or you take a walk with a friend. It's so important to move your body every day. They even, dancing around your living room, even housework is physical activity, and that counts. Being in nature is so important. I could talk for hours about that, but starting the day with a walk with a friend in the woods or in a park is just it's spiritual, but it's also very physical. Another idea is to make sure you have people in your life that can provide some kind of support or coaching, whether you have a good friend or a family member or even a professional that you can talk to, because some of it, aging is not easy, and you constantly encountering new things to which you have to embrace and adjust to. So having somebody professional or just really, really close to you, is very compassionate, is really helpful.
What about spirituality? How does spirituality enter into aging?
Spirituality is essential to successful aging, but that can look so different. Just, going to church, of course, or synagogue is an option, but that is not the only way that you can be spiritual. You can be personally spiritual. You can watch the skies. You can meditate. You can journal. You can connect with nature. There's so many things that can make a person feel spiritual.
Listening to the interviews with elders Barbara, Alice, and Elliot, what stood out to you about how they embody resilience?
Well, Barbara talks about how she simply loves life. She has an inner joy. She loves her family. She loves the mystery of life. She really checked a lot of the resilience boxes. Um, Barbara has a terrific sense of humor and a very positive outlook. And those are really, really key to, emotional health as we grow older. She's seemed very adaptable as well and content. And the thing I really enjoyed about what Barbara says is that she's a joiner. She joined the group. She felt lonely when she moved into the assisted living. And so she joins groups and she's curious about the people that she's meeting and she's getting to know them and feeling much more satisfied that she has relationships and friends now where she's living. So Barbara is doing a terrific job of being resilient, or has been her whole life. She's had a challenging life.
It's interesting to think about how early challenges, there's so many ways to take them. But you are so right that she's bounced back and found ways through. I'm glad you noticed that.
She reminded me a lot of my own mother, who has been very resilient since being widowed, and she has found great happiness and a lot of joy in her friendships and her games nights and her social life.
So being social is a big element here, isn't it?
It is a big element, and it is not easy for everybody. It's amazing how many people actually feel fairly introverted and who feel challenged by trying to forge, friendships and relationships. And that does not get easier as people get older. In fact, it can become more challenging. So, hence the need for different support systems and new strategies and ways to try to find friends, make friends, keep building relationships.
And what about Alice and Elliot?
Alice also had a really difficult life. Interestingly, we find in my work that 100% of the people who feel loneliness, isolation, or depression or lack of resilience as older adults experience childhood trauma. But Alice persevered, and she definitely has found purpose in her life. And purpose, of course, is so important. Purpose is the reason that one wants to get out of bed in the morning. Purpose is what shapes our life and motivates us to keep moving forward. And at 88, I believe, she published her first poetry book. So Alice had a lot of creativity and curiosity. And again, she also has stayed socially engaged. So some of the other things that we have talked about. And Elliot is so interesting, how he kind of felt very distanced from the elderly. And also from his identity when he was younger. But he really has discovered mindfulness, which is also a spiritual practice of simply paying attention to what is in front of you and noticing the beauty in the world around you. He talks about watching the birds. He's at the bird bath, and there's flowers and there are clouds, and it's beautiful. And Elliot, he's found his resilience through his mindfulness, and also what he said at the end about his wife passing away and how it was so physically painful. And he thought about how unbearable it was and that he wasn't sure he could go on. And he realized that his life was so interconnected with other people, and that, he was not alone. And what he did actually would impact the other people that he loved. And so he made the decision to be resilient and to find ways to keep putting one foot in front of the other and make a life that was meaningful and purposeful.
And then things got better for Elliot. He met another woman, fell in love. He's moved. He's the president of a poetry foundation. So it's pretty impressive.
That's a beautiful story. It's nice to know that love can come again.
As we wrap up, Ruth, what do you want listeners to remember about aging with resilience?
I would like people to accept the fact that changes and transitions are inevitable, and to try to greet those as new seasons, and hopefully greeting them with hope. Meaningful engagement also is known to be the most important thing we can do to maintain resilience and successful aging. And also, I hope people feel like they're never too old to learn and to try new things or even to make new friends.
Thank you, Ruth. Over this past hour, we've explored resilience, the ability to adapt, grow, and thrive in the face of life's challenges. Resilience isn't necessarily something everyone's born with, but we can all cultivate it. Developing it will empower us at any age, increasing our ability to thrive and to live with greater purpose, strength, and joy. Our hope is that these conversations spark a greater curiosity about your own path, deepen your powers of adaptability and perseverance, and remind you that you're not alone. Resources and support are within reach to help you navigate your journey.
You've been listening to State of Mind, being human and living well.
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 I want to say a huge thank you to our guest host, Patrice Vecchione, and to all our show guests, Barbara Stark, Alice Tal, Elliot Ruchowitz-Roberts, and Ruth Nickens. And thanks to you for joining us. To learn more about the topics we discussed, be sure to check out the wealth of information on the resource list included in the show notes. If you enjoyed today's show, you may also want to check out episodes 42 and 43, where we explore the many ways people find to build resilience. Episode 53, Writing to Heal, which also features Patrice Vecchione as a writing expert and guest, and episode 76 on medical aid in dying. New episodes of State of Mind are released the first Sunday of every month, and you can find them along with our complete archive on our website at stateofmindmedia.org. If you missed part of today's episode, or you just want to hear it again, you can subscribe to our podcast on all the major platforms. And when you rate and review our podcast, you do help it get found and heard by more listeners. So could you please take a moment to do that for us? Special thanks to Yusuf Hassanein for audio production and volunteer coordination, Vijay Luca for audio production, Rantan Hoy and Ronnie Wong for transcriptions, Priscilla Yee for graphic design, Nimilan Ellen Chauvin for marketing, and Heather Franks and Katrina Tattenham for research. And a special thank you to musician Adrian Legg and Favored Nations Entertainment for our theme music. State of Mind was developed and originally broadcast in association with KSQD-FM in Santa Cruz, California. We always want to hear from listeners and community members just like you. You can submit your very own in your voice recording and become part of the conversation. Simply call in or record an audio file right on your phone. Tell us about a mental health experience you've had, something that's contributed to your recovery, or share a resource that's been helpful. We want to hear from you, and your voice may just be featured on one of our future episodes. Submission details can be found at stateofmindmedia.org. Join us again next month for a brand new episode of State of Mind. Until then, live well.